Positioning is one of the most important, yet least discussed topics when talking about improving in Valorant. Your positioning can make or break a round, and bad positioning is able to destroy your and your team's performance. In this video I'm giving you 5 reasons on why your positioning sucks. My name is Buster and I make educational Valorant content, so if you like those kind of videos, hit subscribe. Reason number 1 is that you change your positioning too often without calling it. Changing your positioning itself doesn't have to be a bad thing. You shouldn't do it too often, but when you do, it's crucial that you actually call it. If you don't, then you might end up with 1 player on one side and 4 on the other, or if it's Haven, you might even leave a site fully open. The same thing goes for switching positions on site as well. If you've been holding long every round, and then you all of a sudden change it to short, then maybe your teammate notices, yeah, but if they don't, then long is open. You in general wanna try to pick a position that you enjoy playing and that your agent can hold well, and then play it a lot. Not just that game, but try to have your favorite positions for all the maps. Playing similar positions every time you play will help you tremendously, since you'll be learning how to react to all different types of scenarios that could happen when playing in that spot. If someone pushes you in a certain way and that's happened 10 times before, then you'll know how to best deal with it. If you get flashed or smoked off, then you know where to retreat and how to do it, etc. Overall, you want to try to stick to this rule unless something isn't working. And that rolls us on to the next reason, and that's that you never switch positions even if you're losing. If you keep losing rounds without really knowing why, then you should probably try switching sides. Sometimes you lose because you make stupid mistakes like being overly aggressive, but that's not always the case. It could simply be that you and the people you're holding the site with simply aren't good at countering the opponent's playstyle, and there's no shame in admitting that. Try switching sides with one teammate, or all of you switch. I'd say that if you've lost 2 or more gun rounds on a site without making any major mistakes, then it's probably a good idea to switch. This is also what I mean with the fact that a lot of people's egos are too big. They'll refuse to admit the fact that they maybe aren't playing that well, and so instead of actually doing something about it, they're stubborn and want to prove themselves. So if you want to switch positions, then like I said in tip 1, call it. Don't switch too often, but if things aren't going your way, then there's no shame in admitting that and switching. Reason 3 for why your positioning sucks is that you don't know how to rotate properly. Rotations are mainly seen as a defender side thing, but they're really important on attack as well. Depending on your rank, you're a lot of times going to be doing something called a default, whether it's consciously or not. What a default is pretty much just your team going to different sites looking for kills. In this scenario, you want to be really quick to rotate if you were to get a kill somewhere. I see way too many people who stick around in certain areas hoping to catch someone off guard when their entire team is rushing a site. Unless you previously called it, then just rotate. Lurking is generally not the best idea, and especially not if you're low ranked. This is because trying to outsmart low ranked players is probably not going to go well for you. And that's because most people don't know when or how to rotate on defender side either, so chances are that someone will be sticking around in the area you're in even if your team is pushing the other side. That's why it's important to learn how to rotate on defender. So if you get a call from your teammate on B saying that there's people there and they're coming B, then be real careful with insta-rotating. A lot of times people exaggerate how many people are actually pushing, and they think that just because they hear a few steps and a flash, it means that they're guaranteed pushing. But that couldn't be further from the truth. I still don't recommend you to just stay where you are if you get that call though, but maybe back off a little and play further back. I like having one person stay on the site that isn't being attacked, but just playing somewhere far back so that they can get information and then fall back if the enemies were to do a fake and rush that side instead. Playing for the retake isn't a dumb idea at all, and in cases like this, it could be your best bet. If you however see the spike on the map or there's 5 people there, then you can rotate without worrying, since they aren't gonna fake a site with the spike there. Depending on how far up they are, you can fully rotate. Otherwise, maybe try to get a flank so that you can get early info if they were to retreat. Knowing when and how to retake is a very complicated subject, and I've already gone pretty in depth, but that's just because there's so much to cover. You don't need to overly obsess over this, and if there's a simple takeaway, then it's that you shouldn't fully rotate before you see the spike. Reason 4 is that you rarely use off angles. Off angles are angles meant to catch the enemies off guard. These are way less common than the standard places people peek, like heaven, default, etc. For this reason, most people won't be expecting an enemy there. Now, I'm not just talking about some weird corner, but it could be sitting anywhere. Standing in front of a box instead of behind it, pushed up against a wall holding instead of just holding the peak if you're aggro, and so on. Many people will just sit in the most common positions, and why this is such a big mistake is because the person peeking will always have a slight advantage. This is what's called the peeker's advantage, and it's the reason why sometimes it feels like you don't even have the time to react before you get killed by someone peeking you. Why this is worse when you're holding a very common angle is because they won't only have the peeker's advantage, but their crosshair will also be positioned at where you are, since most players automatically clear the most common positions upon entering a site. For this reason, you'll have a very hard time if you always hold default angles. If you on the other hand have an operator, it's not so bad though, since you can one-shot, and you should in fact be careful of off angles when you're opping, since they can be harder to fall back from. And because you only have one bullet to hold back a push with, unless you're Jet, Rain or Chamber, stick to mostly common angles with op. The next reason is that you don't take abilities into account when positioning yourself somewhere. Now, these are things like Brim or Breach ult, but also less thought about abilities like Viper walls or smokes. If you're facing a Brimstone with his ult ready on bind or split, then maybe think twice about going lamps or ropes. The same thing goes for a Breach ult on maps where you can hit the entire site with it, like on Fracture for example. But this goes for regular abilities as well, like I mentioned before. I for example like updrafting and dashing up ropes on Fracture when attacking. This can easily catch the enemies off guard, and combined with a stun from Breach gives me a way into CT. If you're defending there and you see me do that once, then most people wouldn't stop playing ropes. But if you're smart, then you'll maybe back up into CT a bit to avoid the stun, and then be ready to kill me when I dash in. The same thing goes for if the enemies always smoke off a certain part of the site. Instead of playing behind those smokes and getting smoked off, giving them the plant, maybe try to play closer to them or on the other side of the site. These are things that people don't think about since so many players are playing on autopilot. But if you can take abilities into account when positioning yourself, then you'll have a huge advantage. Good positioning without good movement is like good aim without good game sense. So to improve your movement, check out the video on the screen right now. That's it from me today. See you next time.